Hey everyone, welcome to another Joe Gomez jazz guitar lesson, or just guitar lesson. Um, this is another lesson about building speed. Goes into the practice series. The first thing I want to kind of get out of the way, someone sent me a message and they said they couldn't really tell what my right hand's doing, and I don't have an upgraded camera or anything as of right now, but I was just going to kind of explain what I'm doing with my picking. So mine actually comes from kind of twisting the forearm, kind of exaggerating a little bit. If I turn the side, that's pretty much all I'm doing. There's nothing really any special to that. However, when I am, so on the strings other than the first, when I do pick, my pick does land on the next string, which is called a rest stroke. So again, from the side, when I pick, it's landing. And the thought behind that is, well, there's a couple different reasons. I think I started it just because my teacher told me to. Basically, that was, you do get a better sound. It's a little bit stronger. But for the other reasons, so one reason is you're fighting gravity when you have to lift the pick up. So if you have something kind of stopping the pick, you're using less muscle to stop the hand going in that direction than pulling it back the other way. It's kind of like if you imagine you're running like a 100-yard dash and you're going 50 one way and 50 the other way. You're exerting a lot of energy when you get here because you've got to stop your body from going this direction so you can get back this way. Kind of the same thing with the pick, just in a lot smaller scale. So if you've got something that stops the pick, you can get it back up in the air quicker. And in our case, that's the upstroke. So I think that's probably the main reason, is it does help with speed. Another thing that I do find that's real beneficial from that certain technique, the rest stroke, is it helps me find the strings a lot easier. After a while, you just kind of get a feel for what string that you're landed on, and you kind of get a mental picture of, all right, well, I landed on this string. So I think that's what's going on there with the rest stroke. But yeah, other than what I'm doing with my alternate picking, it's just I'm just kind of rotating. Everything is really loose. I'm not gripping the pick too hard. It's just a real loose movement, and it takes a little bit of time to get it to where it's smooth and accurate. So you may just try strumming for a while and then break that into smaller groups of strings, maybe 2 strings or 3 strings, and then finally 1, and you should have something. But I mean, the movement is like you're shaking water off your hand or something. It's just real relaxed. So with the last lesson, we talked a lot about the right hand and tremolo picking, really. So the next kind of step to our equation is, okay, yeah, you might be able to pick pretty fast, but we haven't really talked about the left hand. And this is a pretty important aspect of playing that a lot of people overlook. A lot of times you'll see, so I'm going to play real sloppy for a second. So you'll see this happen a lot. A couple notes hit, a couple notes don't at all. So why doesn't it sound good? This hand was moving fast, my fingers were moving fast. It should, come together, right? I should be making millions of dollars. The missing link there is having both hands in sync with each other. That's the real missing link. When this hand was picking, something could have been going different with this hand. So what I do, so everybody should know the kind of the drill that we worked on with the burst exercises. I do the same thing with just 2 fingers, working on getting just getting used to playing faster and slower. But you want to do it with every finger group. So you have your pointer and middle, pointer and ring, you have your pointer and pinky, you have your inside fingers, your middle and ring, then your middle and pinky, and finally your ring and pinky, which is going to be hard for everybody at first. Then what I do is I'll do 3 fingers at a time. So I might do pointer, ring, pinky. I mean, you can kind of figure out different exercises. You might do a triplet or, whatever you feel. But I work on that. You can do it going up. You can go up, back, down. So an exercise is going up. But you could always work on just going back. Then you could work on going both directions. And then what I do is I'll put a stretch in between the fingers that were together. So it'll be like that. So now I've got a fret in between each finger, and I'll do the same exercise. And the reason I do that is because when you have the stretch, it's just a different feeling. I don't really know how to explain it other than that, I guess, because you've got such a different stretch, so the finger has to do a little bit of a different work, so your hand might not sync up the same way it did when it was doing this. And then again, you'd want to do pointer, middle, pinky, and then do a stretch in between the pointer and middle. And I think that's pretty much every finger combination that you'll ever see, especially guys that are used to doing their scales, 3 notes per string. You're probably seen all of these before, and we'll talk about those when we get into the scale practices. But I think working on them on one string is beneficial for beginners, because the hardest aspect, I think, of picking is getting from one string to the next. So that brings us to our next thing. So if you are a beginner and you've been doing the drills and everything, but you haven't got your tremolo up to real high speed yet, I do recommend just you want to do exercises with the left hand, but stay on one string. Definitely work on things where you're going across all strings, whether you're practicing scales or arpeggios. But when you're focusing on speed, what you want to do is work on things that you're really good at, or getting good at, or things that you've got memorized. If you're trying to do new material and you're trying to build speed, you're just going to get more frustrated. So do some simple things. These hand syncing exercises are great. If you're working on your scales on one string at a time, that's a good place to put these. So you can do like the C major scale. That started from F and went to F. You could argue that's the F Lydian scale. You could think C major. And then you could work on building speed on that, or anything else. After you've got one string and you're real comfortable with it, say you got your tremolo up, which I think you should have a good tremolo, at least around 120 to 160 beats per minute. It's not crazy fast. You won't be shredding or anything. I guess you could be, but I think that's a good steady tempo. That's a good goal to get to. But once you've got one string kind of down, then move to 2 strings. Do kind of the same exercises. Where you might play the C major scale, but going across two strings in a position. Something like that. And then building speed from there. Or if you've got a lick that's using 2 strings, that's fine too. And don't be afraid of just using open string exercises. What is the name of the book? I think it's like Speed Mechanics for your guitar. One of the first exercises is a tremolo picking exercise that uses the open string. Let's see if I remember it. I think that's what it was. It was like E harmonic minor, some sort of lick like that. Don't be afraid of stuff like that. Some of that stuff's really fun. If you listen to Guys like Pat Martino, he does some incredible stuff just using the open strings. He's doing some pull off things and everything, but he'll you know go chorus after chorus doing stuff like that, and the crowd goes nuts afterwards. So don't be afraid of that stuff. It can be a lot of fun. Uh, so now we know some different exercises. I wanted to kind of get a little bit more into how to actually practice speed. I'm not sure if I covered it in great detail yet, but there's a couple of different ways that I'll look at things, and I think it depends on the person as well. I don't think one way is going to work for everybody universally. So, uh, the way that I usually practice is taking something and playing it extremely slow, so slow that I can't mess it up. That could be 30 beats per minute. Who knows? It could be 60. Whatever I'm comfortable at where I don't mess up. There's no, I don't have any misstrokes or anything with my picking. My fingers go to the right spot. And then what I do, if I can play it 5 times perfectly at that speed, then I'll bump it up, between 2 to 5 beats per minute, uh, and then keep building speed from there. And then once I get to a max, I try to push it past that max just a little bit, and then I go back to a comfortable tempo and play it again. So you might say that takes a long time, but it's part of the joy of practicing. After like I said in the last video, I think you should keep a journal. So sometimes I'll write, like Pat Martino lick or Paul Gilbert lick or something, and I'll watch it progress over a month, and I see the speed gain, and that's enjoyable for me because I can see that I'm growing progress, and then eventually that lick becomes part of my playing, which is when it's completely like a subconscious thing. I'm in the middle of improvising and it just pops out. So that's really enjoyable for me. So that's kind of a goal you can look at while you're listening to a metronome click and driving yourself crazy playing the same lick time after time. It does have its benefits after a while. Another way, and I actually got this from the Kenny Warner book, Effortless Mastery. He talks about trying to play something real fast, but maybe just starting on one note. And I think there's some truth to that. And I've heard interviews with Sean Lane who talked about sometimes you just got to play fast, just to get the feel of it. And I've heard other players say that they have to feel the speed before that they're actually able to do it. Just building it up with a metronome doesn't seem to do it. I don't do this really very often. Sometimes I'll do it just to kind of get my tremolo to the next level, which is kind of the same thing with the burst exercises for me. But give it a try. Just do it with your scale. Maybe you start on C. Just, try to pick a tempo. I don't have a metronome with me right now. Just get used to playing that one note, and then see if you can get to that next note at a pretty fast tempo, but cleanly. And so, that's a fairly quick tempo. I don't know what it would be at, but then from there, once you're comfortable playing those 2 notes at a pretty fast tempo, then adding in a third. So the next, I don't know if I can do it that fast. We'll find out. Now I'm doing some hammer-ons, so I'm not really doing it. So at that speed, I'd have to stick it just 2 notes for a while until I could get it. So that's an interesting way, I think, of playing. But I have told that to some students, and they enjoyed that a whole lot, and it worked for them. Just trying to play something, and they came up with their own methodical method to it, and worked it out, and then they started building speed from that. So I wanted to share that with some people. But saying that, you do want to work on your phrasing a bunch. With speed, a lot of my speed actually comes from legato playing, which is hammer-ons and pulling off. And that's because when I first started playing guitar, I didn't realize I could pick the string more than once, so my scales all sounded like this. Every one of them, until I started taking lessons, and then the first teacher I had was like, "You do realize you can pick more than once?" I really had no idea. I don't know why I thought that, but that's how I played for a long time. And so I have more of a, I guess it's just kind of burnt into me to play legato. Um, but when you are playing licks, or you're transcribing it, you get it from a book or whatever, you want to think about how it might be phrased. Uh, and that's a thing that I notice with a lot of my students, and you know, when I talk to other teachers, they notice their students too. We want to pick everything, and that might not be the correct thing. You may want to do some hammer-on, pull-off things, just depending on what the lick is. Um, so you use your ears and use your best judgment to see what the overall sound. And for me, I play a lot faster when I'm not always picking. So when I do have licks that are more legato based, I do find that I am able to get the metronome click a lot higher than if I'm trying to pick everything. Uh, but talking about that, a big problem with beginner practice in general is always practicing the same thing. That's why you never really see yourself getting too much better, because you're always repeating the same things. Scales are probably the number one. How many people know this scale, but don't know all the other positions for the pentatonic scale? You stay in that little box, you never grow out of it, and that's why your playing never really gets out of there. And that's what this whole series is about, to help everybody get out of that rut of doing that and finding some creative ways of practicing. But uh, we also tend to do it with our speed too, and it's probably something that a lot of us don't even really consider. We may play a lot of songs that are in the same tempo range, and then we say, "Man, I really wish that I could play fast," but then we don't play anything that's fast. But some of the jazz guys are like that. They'll play songs that are fairly quick, but not bebop quick. So don't be scared, no matter what your playing level is, to start trying to tackle these songs at a slow tempo and building them up to speed. Uh, I think I had even heard an interview with Mike Stern talking about that. Uh, I think Jocko or something said that his playing really wouldn't happen. It sounded real rushed, and he took a song like Giant Steps or something, started real slow, and this over the course of time built it up to where it was a really fast tempo. Uh, so don't be afraid of doing some stuff like that. You can even pick a fairly easy song, like Mr. PC is a great one. John Coltrane's playing that pretty quick, and for guitar players that can be pretty hard to play at that tempo with that amount of intensity. Uh, so don't be afraid to do stuff like that. Try to go above and beyond what you're used to playing, and I think you'll be happier. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you just got to learn a fast song to start playing fast. Uh, so the last thing I want to kind of talk about with picking and speed, there's actually a really great book by Howard Roberts called Super Chops. It's no longer in print, and it's usually pretty expensive if you can find it. But basically, what it is you're practicing eighth notes for 10 minutes at a time while improvising. And you start at a very, very slow tempo. So for beginners, I'd suggest maybe start something simple like a blues or something. And this will help your comping a lot too. So what you want to do is record yourself playing a blues, and you can use chord voicings that you're familiar with. Just pick a blues, play through it for 10 minutes, record yourself playing it. And then what you want to do is improvise, but using consistent eighth notes. Don't use anything else, and only use strict alternate picking. And I think that the book actually starts you at like 52 beats per minute, maybe something like that. And you want to build it up over time to where it's consistent. Um, the important thing is, if say you do start at 52 and it's not happening, you're not alternate picking right, you're missing notes. You need to slow it down and stay at that tempo until it's comfortable, and then try to keep building. Uh, and over time, you'll notice your picking gets a lot stronger, your ear gets a lot stronger, you're more in tune to the instrument, and you're able to play longer lines rather than just kind of maybe a short burst at a time. And then there's different ways of practicing it too. you may start with just working on, you know, playing arpeggios through a blues. That way you can arpeggiate each chord and really hit the chord tones. Also working on not always starting on the root, but maybe starting from the third, fifth, or flat seventh if you're talking about a dominant seventh blues. Maybe you want to get better at playing the blues scale, but you want to play it in all positions. That's a great time. And that kind of ties in with a perpetual motion exercise that I'll introduce when we get into scales. But maybe that's something that you can tie in with this super chops idea, because it's going pretty slow to where it gives you time to think about where the positions are. You can start crossing positions at the same time while you're building your picking speed up. And then you can get used to combining those. But the thing that you want to try not to do while you're doing the super chops thing, and it says it somewhere in the book, is you don't want to always play the same thing. Say you are playing like a B flat blues, and you've got just let's just say you're just playing an arpeggio, and say every single time you start on the root, every time you get to B flat. Well, maybe the next B flat that comes up, maybe try starting it from the third, maybe playing that arpeggio. Just try to keep mixing it up. That'll open your ear up to new sounds. And of course, once you get the, kind of the base of the arpeggio, the 1, 3, 5, 7, you can start adding in the extensions, 9, 11, sharp 11, 13, or any of the alter tones to that. So I hope, I know this wasn't a lot of playing for a video about speed, but I wanted to present a lot of ideas about how to go about it for yourself, because the truth is the things that work for me probably, they might work for you, but they probably won't. You might not be drawn to them. You might not like the same music I like, or think the same licks I think are cool, or so I'm just kind of giving you ideas so you can kind of be creative with your practice on your own. And there will be a video about all of this at the very end of this entire practice series, where I'm talking more about this. But it's kind of good to throw the idea out there, because it looks like I'm running a almost 25-minute video and I haven't really played too many notes, but that's kind of why. So I was just going back and writing down some of these exercises, and then going back and saying, okay, what can I do with this? How can I practice this? What scale am I working on that I can apply to one string, because my I don't tremolo pick very fast, or my hand synchronization isn't very good, so I need to go back and work on that. How can I work on that on one string, or how can I work on it in 2 strings? How can I work on that in a position? Am I able to play across the neck, no matter what combination my fingers doing, and keep a strict picking going? Those are all things to consider. And again, going back to phrasing, how well is the phrasing happening, while you're developing the speed, because that's one thing you don't want to do. Some guys pull it off very well, where they're picking so fast and it sounds like a machine gun. Some of those guys sound great doing that, but even Paul Gilbert talks about it. He says his licks that are his biggest bang for your buck are ones where he's combining hammer-ons, pull-offs, playing legato along with the alternate picking. There's some sort of phrasing, and his big thing is, he wants to sound like a vocalist with certain things. That's why he adds in bends and everything else. So, try to look for your own voice while you're trying to build speed as well. So, I hope everybody gets a lot out of this lesson, especially with this long it is. If you watched all the way through it, I appreciate it. If you like this video, like I said, every Wednesday I'll be putting out more. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. But until next time, I'll see you guys.